And that will wrap up today's episode. I will not be here next week, so don't forget, you need to find somebody to fill in for me.
Oh, that's right. I'll figure something out. See you in a couple weeks. Hey, Just a Guy. I need to fill in for my co-host next week on my podcast. Do you think you can fill in last minute?
Hey, sorry, bud, but on the weekends I teach a Hearthstone class over at the Senior Center. That day they're going to learn how to spam emotes.
Oh, that sounds fun. But now, where will I find another middle-aged white guy to talk about video games, regional food we like, and other favorite podcasts on the exact same subject?
Hey, look, why don't you just call Mike Mercenaries?
Mike Mercenaries? What's that?
Mike Mercenaries is the service all the podcasts are using nowadays when they need a fill-in host at the last minute.
But I can't afford that. We can't even afford to pay the guests, or even the hosts. What do you think, we make coin and seed money?
See, that's just it. You pay Mike Mercenaries an exposure.
But we can barely even offer any of that.
It'll be enough. Go ahead and give him a call.
Okay, I will. Thanks. Hello, Mike Mercenaries? I need to rent a podcast host for my show this week. Do you have a portfolio of hosts I can take a look at? What? You only have one host available? Oh, you only have one host, period. All right, well, I guess we'll take him.
And those are all the cards that were released this week. Excitement abounds.
I couldn't agree more. And thanks for filling in this week. It's been fantastic. Thank you again, Mike Mercenaries.
Mike Mercenaries, the podcast saviors you can trust. Yeah, mostly. Remember, our audio antics are for entertainment purposes only, and any resemblance to professional voice work is purely coincidental. We are not responsible for reduced ratings, uncomfortable pauses, or unexpected side effects, including, but not limited to, uncontrollable laughter, the desire to try something like peep soda, or really bad advice on playing video games. Use Mike Mercenaries at your own risk. If you experience fits of uncontrollable laughter lasting more than 4 hours, congratulations. Ask your doctor about it today. Please like and subscribe.
Electric Sheep City approves this message.
Welcome back to Bread and Butter, everybody, where we're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. As you can hear, I'm not Doc. Doc is in the process of moving this weekend. We knew about that. So our guest host tonight is Electric Sheep City, except he's not able to be here because his internet is not playing nice. However, we do have our special guest tonight who has internet and is not moving, and that is Goliath the Dwarf. Goliath, how are you tonight?
Doing pretty good tonight. It's a nice Sunday night, although in my area it's currently 35 degrees, and I am adjusting with adding several blankets and sweaters and hoodies at the moment.
We actually, so it's colder right now, and we're about to get snow on Wednesday, or at least it's partially so, but yesterday it was like 79. It was like 80 degrees, so that's just typical New England. Like, we went to my son's last soccer game, and I actually had to move into the shade. It was too warm. It was great. But, yep, now we have cold rain and snow, and that's New England for you. But what have you been doing inside the game of Hearthstone lately?
Well, I tend to play different modes depending on what mood I'm in. Lately, I've been attempting to see if I can get my first ever 2 months hitting a legend in a row. Currently, I've managed to get up to Diamond 10 in both Standard and Wild. Wild, I still have a 2-star streak going right now. Standard, I had no stars. I've worked my way up there from scratch with some Paladin. I guess I'm hoping there's not many days of the month left, but I'm hoping to see if I can nab one of those. And maybe try to finish out the free version of the Battlegrounds pass while I'm at it before that runs out.
I think you have some time in the Battlegrounds pass, because that doesn't switch over when we hit the new expansion. That season is staggered, so you have a little bit more time.
Yeah, they're on their own seasons.
So what Paladin have you been playing?
Well, I've been using a pure Paladin deck in the Standard area that I nabbed off of the Out of Cards website, made a couple adjustments for some cards I didn't currently have, largely making use of that getting a lot of silver hands on and buffing them with like the Crusader's aura, using things like the class action lawsuit and our favorite little paladin legendary gets you 3 legendary invitations back from our Murder at Castle Nathria expansion, the Countess. But I get a lot of satisfaction. It's fun when you play one of those pure pally decks, or if they ever make them for other classes. It's fun. The challenge, the no neutral cards. I tend to forget to put neutral cards in my decks anyway. But then I do sometimes have that one little stumble when it's not Stormu Day, and I decide, oh yeah, I just have to slot that into a deck that I already play, and I forget. Stormu is a legendary card, a neutral card, so all of a sudden the entire synergy doesn't work. For Wild, I've largely been doing a lot of Totem Shaman. That's carried me through a couple seasons. I've had to make some pretty minor alterations, if any at all, from month to month for the past little bit.
Fantastic. I've actually been playing a lot of Paladin myself, but I've been playing I've been also playing Pure Paladin, but mine is not the Dude Pure Paladin. Mine is the Garden's Grace Pure Paladin, where we are using Katori, and we are making our minions big. We are hoping our opponent doesn't have reverberations, and we are going face faster than they can handle it, and we like to boogie down. So that deck has been a lot of fun. I've actually played, I'm probably up to about 600 games with it by now in one iteration or another. I've actually managed to play with the Cool Ghoul, which is one of my favorite cards, but we've kind of moved away from that because at the 4 mana spot, it's really tough because once you order in the court, you get to that 4 mana spot, you're really looking for Keeper Strength. I think it's Keeper Strength. The one that gives you +2/+2 and deals the attack damage to all the minions. And that's usually what you need it for. And when you draw another 4 mana cost that card at that time, it's not great. But I'm still around 3,000. I got up to 1,000-ish. Well, I mean 1,500-ish. I've fallen back down to 4,000. I'm just trying to get over my anxiety of playing up there. So I've just been jamming games. And then when it gets to the end of the night, I'm like, okay, I'll set a break point either high or low and say, if I break either of those, we're going to call it for the night. Because otherwise it's just, let's play one more game. But I have a solution for you for the Nozdormu Day. Is you play Scam Dragon Rogue, and then that deck works fine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that deck, but that one is...
I'm not familiar with the term, actually.
It's basically... Dragon. Yeah, so it's basically you play, I think it's Kobold Illusionist, and you have the weapon that has the Death Rattle, and the only Death Rattle you have is the Death Wing, that when it dies, it summons all the dragons in your hand.
Ah, of course.
So you can do that on like turn 4 or 5, and it's basically got like preparations and coins and secret passages, but you have the backup. There's one card that makes your death rattles in your hand cost 1, and you can play that. But for the most part, you either hit your scam or you're trying to get to dragons, and it gets you a lot of wins real fast. And you can play your Nozdormu in it, and it doesn't ruin anything.
Well, that is fun because I do love tribal synergy decks. Generally, if it has like let's make a hunter deck that's just chock full of beasts, or like I said, Totem Shaman, or dragons, or now we have the Quillboar and the Naga and all of that. I love when they add a new tribe and now we have where the tribes stack, and there's all sorts of fun combos you can try to pull off with those. And spell schools are essentially just tribes for spells, so I was ecstatic when those came out.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out how Boogie Down is a holy spell. I guess they've never seen Footloose. But what have you been doing outside of the game, Goliath?
Well, things have been pretty busy for me overall. For one, as of our recording, I turned 28 years old this past Tuesday. So recent birthday on that. Of course, that also means that as we're recording, Halloween is coming up. And in my day job, I currently am a small town newspaper reporter and photographer. So I've been getting a lot of photos. Just last night, I was photographing like a masquerade dance at the fireman's place and like a Halloween parade. And it's really fun being able to get pictures like cute kids in costumes and stuff like that. And I guess a big life change that's happened for me recently within this past month here is that I got a surgery to help repair some damage that was done to my nose in a sledding accident when I was 11. So for like the past 17 years, I could only breathe through one nostril at a time, and now that's all fixed, and I'm just really enjoying like breathing without any effort. So those are kind of the really big things happening outside of Hearthstone for me lately.
My goodness, that must have been bad when you had a cold.
Oh, yes, I got stopped up so easily, like constant mouth breathing and like 6 pillow elevation when you're sick to sleep.
But did you have, because of how, I don't know how it was broken, were you able to get a good snot rocket going, or?
I was able to do very good dying elephant impressions whenever I blew my nose. Let me put it that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's Halloween week here, obviously, because it's always Halloween week when it's Halloween week everywhere. But my kid's been he's had a couple different parties, like one for Taekwondo, and then we went to the Y, and he gets to dress up, and he had his last soccer game, like I said, this weekend. So it's just been kind of a busy thing like that. And my wife's not feel good today, so she's been kind of chill, which means we didn't really have to do anything today. So I get to sit down and play video games all day, which not something that usually happens. And I mostly played Inscription because today was the Blizzlet Gaming Club meetup for Inscription, and I hadn't started it yet. So I started this morning hoping I could get far enough where I could participate, but I haven't. I can't talk about the game because you're not supposed to talk about the game because you're supposed to let people discover things about the game. So we won't be going into spoilers here. But let's just say that I was late with the show notes tonight because I was playing Inscription. And then while I was typing up the show notes, I was playing Inscription. And then after I handed over the show notes, I was playing Inscription. And then when the show was about to start, I realized, oh, I better save out of this game and go start the show. So it's a fun game. I'm enjoying it. I highly recommend. It's not too expensive, and it's usually on sale. It's one of those ones. You'll play it. It's easy to figure out, and then there's like mysteries to figure out. So it's fun. Highly recommend. But anyway, Goliath. Where did you get your username from? Goliath the Dwarf is the official name.
Yes, that's an interesting story. So I was a big theater kid growing up, and so I was in a lot of plays. One of the last ones that I was in before I kind of aged out of all the youth theater stuff was this musical production of Narnia. And I was my part was the dwarf sidekick to the White Witch, if you're familiar with the story. Now, at one point during the show, we kind of realized that my character didn't actually have a name. I was just written as Dwarf in the script. And so just among ourselves for the cast, we decided it'd be funny if we kind of gave my character a name. The girl who was playing my boss, the White Witch of Narnia, thought it would be funny to have kind of an oxymoron where, dwarves are short. So let's go with Goliath. And partially because I had a massive crush on her at the time, I was like, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. Then later on, my brother got me to make my first Steam account because he wanted to play a multiplayer shooter game with me called Blacklight Retribution, which is sadly closed down the servers at this point. And so then I needed a name. I just decided that this was at the top of my head. I'll make Goliath the Dwarf. And then you start meeting people in Discord and stuff. And you kind of need to make all of your gaming accounts the same names so that people can recognize you when you play across different launchers and stuff. So just kind of became my online identity. And I do love dwarves. I identify with the typical Tolkien fantasy dwarf with several aspects. I'm a bit on the short side. I have an appreciation for beards. I have a strong appreciation for craftsmanship. And in a lot of these stories like the Hobbit movies and stuff, which were also coming out at the time when I was in that place, that was a big influence. They have like a lot of deep bass singing, which I do quite a bit myself. So I consider myself much more like a dwarf than like many other fantasy creatures, and thus Goliath the Dwarf.
Well, that was quite interesting. I actually just recently finished reading I think it's The Magician's Nephew. I think that was the book called, the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
And I was reading with my son. Now he's reading other things. So we've started The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but we haven't gotten too far into it. Probably like 2 or 3 chapters. So we'll see how that goes over he's reading stories with his mom right now. So we don't want to like conflict stories, and then he has weird memories of what characters are in what and all that. So one story at a time. Excuse me.
Makes sense.
So how did you get started in Hearthstone, Warcraft, and gaming in general?
Well, so the way it happened for me was that I actually was introduced to Warcraft largely through the Warcraft movie, which a lot of people who play the game don't necessarily like, but it was kind of my first real introduction to it. And after I saw the movie, I wanted to know what happens next. And it turns out that there was like 20 years worth of a game and written story about what happened next. And so I decided to start playing it. My first digital card game was actually Elder Scrolls Legends, because I'm also an Elder Scrolls fan. I have way too many hours logged on Skyrim over the years. And I decided to give that a shot because it was something to help fill that gap in between, waiting for the mythical time when Elder Scrolls 6 will eventually come out. But eventually then I discovered Hearthstone, and I really enjoyed it. It's nice and simple. I have tried Magic the Gathering a couple times in the past. It is far more complicated, and I like the simplicity of Hearthstone. I like the homey atmosphere, and I like the kind of a fun, laid back theme and connection with Warcraft lore, which we'll get into later on. And then, I eventually kind of, discovered communities, especially when I found custom card contests in links from the Hearthstone wiki when I was trying to keep up with new releases. And that was my introduction to a lot of the different communities. I actually started writing some lore articles for a website called Out of Cards, and did that for a couple years. And that also introduced me. From there, I started talking with the Born to Be Wild podcast. There were some great people. And that's kind of how I've ended up being something in the larger Hearthstone community, or at least small niches of it.
Yeah, we're all kind of circular or Venn if you have a Venn diagram of all the different communities, a lot of them line up and share the same people. Well, you've answered like several questions that we had all in one. So you do lore episodes on Born to Be Wild, and you do some other podcasts too. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, actually, Born to Be Wild is the only podcast that I've done before this one. But so I actually got started writing lore episodes for Out of Cards because it was a new website at the time. It was launching off the people who previously ran Hearthpawn, and I thought that it'd be great how on the Warcraft on the Hearthstone wiki, there's often like little links to the Warcraft wiki about the story behind a card. If you're seeing what is this, it gives you the connections. And I thought it'd be cool if the new website, something like that, give me some online writing experience. And I just kind of have this really fun connection with finding the references. Sometimes they're very clear. Sometimes they're rather obscure things in the game that have been made into a card. And then eventually Nate and a couple of the other hosts of Born to Be Wilds found them and wanted me to start doing some stuff on the show. And now that's a thing I kind of regularly do a few times a year, even though I've stopped writing my typical lore articles on Out of Cards. Just was taking up some real estate in my head. I had things changing in my life. I still highly recommend the website, though. There's some great people over there. But it's really fun. Reveal season is one of my favorite times. That happens 3 times a year pretty much in Hearthstone, where you get to see what are the new cards coming out with the theme. And I'm looking for, do I recognize any of the characters or anything like that? It's a real exciting time. And especially when you have a super lore heavy theme like Titans was that we just had, we're kind of phasing out of as we get into the Badlands one. I was just over the moon with all of that. That is so much fun to be able to talk about all that. And I love telling stories. I love hearing stories, and this is a great medium to do so.
Well, fantastic. Which expansion has been your favorite to kind of break down?
Well, like I said, Titans is certainly up there quite a bit. It might take the cake. I did have a lot of fun with Myrtle at Castle Nathria. Rasticon's Rumble is also pretty fun because that combines the lore of like so many different troll tribes that each have their own stories, and like trolls have like a really big history in Warcraft as a really ancient race. Old was pretty fun. Sabers of Old was the first one that I started writing articles about back in the Out of Cards days. I think that those are maybe the ones that come to mind the most. But really, all of them are fun in their own ways. Some have a bit more to offer, but in terms of direct lore, but they're all fun to dissect in whatever way, shape, or form.
Well, all the ones you put out there are the ones that actually have canon lore behind them. I mean, obviously, there was no murder at Castle Nathria in WoW or whatever, but there's a lot of history there in Warcraft that they just had for the expansion for Shadowlands, and Uldum has its own history. Titans has a lot going on, especially, you know, up to the recent things. But how do you deal with the ones that are a little off kilter, like say Festival of Legends?
Yeah, so Festival of Legends is one where you mostly just have fun with the theme, because there's an interesting relationship between Warcraft lore and Hearthstone lore. Hearthstone lore very much takes Warcraft lore as a base and then very much takes liberties and just has fun with it. Like I said earlier, the kind of the fun, laid back atmosphere of Hearthstone is one of the things that drew me to it. Lots of other tabletop games, or digital board games, take themselves very seriously. Like Magic the Gathering, for example, the idea is that as you're playing these cards, you are actually enacting a real epic battle between all these forces or something, which is fun in concept, but when I've tried playing the game, I'm not really thinking about that sort of thing, as I'm just focusing on trying to play the game or get the strategy right. But Hearthstone is very much that you're in a tavern that exists in the Warcraft universe, and you're telling tall tales inspired by the actual lore. So you're like a person in a fantasy world making up fantasy stories that are fantasy within fantasy, like the Russian nesting dolls. And it's just really fun to have that idea of like how we have it in real life, where, you know, sometimes maybe some big event happened, but your average person who's just drinking in a tavern may not have all the details right and may take some creative liberties spinning their own story about it. And that's a real fun way to interpret the sets. And so with something like Festival of Legends, there's usually almost always one or two characters, usually legendary cards, who are at least a minor NPC in World of Warcraft. Those are the ones that I kind of latch on. The same thing for a couple that we'll talk about with Badlands, actually, which is coming up. But sometimes I don't let it bother me, because Festival of Legends in particular was just so much fun. And I'm a music guy too. So seeing all the different genres represented in the classes, that was just something that was really fun. And I focused on that angle.
Speaking of drinking and taking liberties, you do some parody songs. So how did that get started?
Yes, I do. Well, that's something that the Born to Be Wild podcast has done for quite a while. And I offered to do one for the episode that I was going to be on, which at first I thought was just going to be a one-time thing, but ended up where I have, over the past 3 years, written, I think, around 24 different parody songs, I think. Some of them focusing more on gameplay aspects, some of them a bit more lore focused. but it's really fun to like take a song and try to find like what's the core element in here, like the core pun that you can work on. Like I did a song about Yasharaj based on Ra Ra Rasputin, like Yasharaj. Um, there's some fun ones I've done like a song called Saint Elmo's Fire. I talked about with the Onyxia's Lair how you don't want to stand in the Black Dragon's fire. But Sunken City Under the Sea from Little Mermaid was just a given right there. And it's just a really fun challenge to find just enough commonality elements in the song and write about something from the game or the story where you're making enough connections that's not just you're writing a whole set of new words and plastering it onto the tune, but you're actually finding ways to really connect the essence of them, so that if someone heard the parody first and then they went back and listened to the original song, that they would see why that one was chosen. And I've done a lot of singing in my life. I've been in a bunch of different choirs, been in a lot of stage musicals, and it's just really fun to have a creative outlet like this. And I'm very grateful to the people on the Born to Be Wild podcast for constantly giving me this opportunity.
Well, fantastic. Bring it back to Hearthstone a little bit. What modes do you like to play? I know you said you like to play a couple different things.
Yeah, so Wild is kind of a core mode that I play quite a bit, largely because I'm a hashtag never duster. I love, for me, the fun of the game is the gradually earning and building up the collection. I'm pretty much a free for play type of person, although I have been enticed by cosmetic deals at various times in the past because sometimes they just look so cool. But yeah, for me, everything is like the matter of playing whichever mode it is, and you get up the rewards track and you get your free packs or your gold or whatever. And it's the fun of filling out the collection and just enjoying the art. I love just flipping through the card collection and seeing how things are growing. But in terms of what I like to play, so Wild makes pretty much full use of that collection. I do love Twists now because that also does that in different ways. And Duels is a really fun mode for me because I love the solo play aspects. I really miss the fact that they aren't making solo content anymore, unfortunately. But this takes the elements of some of the best ones, like the Dungeon Run and the Dalaran Heist and all that, and merges it with an ever-growing, almost wild amount of cards that you can build from. And but then you're doing against other people, and it's a great way if you're good enough at it, which I'm often not. But if you make that 150 gold investment, it's handy as a free-to-play player to try to get more bang for your buck in that sense. It's a bit of a gamble, and I oftentimes don't break even, but it's still really fun. Battlegrounds is decently fun, depending on kind of what they're doing, what mood I'm in. I've been enjoying the anomalies system that they've been having this current season. I have to say that I tried out Mercenaries for a while. It just couldn't hold me because it is so different and disconnected from the rest of the game. But overall, like I still do it every so often. I'm willing to do pretty much any mode in Hearthstone. I don't mind if they add new ones or polish up other ones or whatever. And just more ways to play. And yeah, I think that you're denying yourself a lot of fun opportunities if you lock yourself down to only one or two modes, personally.
That's fair. What classes do you like to play?
Well, I play a little bit of every class, again, depending on what mood I'm in, but I do always keep coming back to Warlock for whatever reason. Maybe it's partially because my first ever World of Warcraft character was a Warlock, so I have a bit of that bias, but it is really fun. Again, I said I like tribal synergies, and so demons as a tribal synergy play very heavily into that. Now you also have like the spell school synergies, the Felon Shadow quite a bit. But I also just really enjoy the challenge of turning a negative into a positive. So what's Warlock all about? It's about making those sacrifices for more power. So the discards or the health tap, and finding ways to build decks that actually turn having to discard or losing some health into a benefit, which is why I've always enjoyed Seed Lock, as toxic as it might be as a deck sometimes, and they had to literally ban it from Wild for a while. But I just find it really fun that you can take something that initially this was going to hurt you, but you can get it to help you out. Mage is also pretty fun for me. You have access to lots of different types of spells, and I think it's one of the classes I'm maybe a bit more excited about. Again, coming up with the next expansion, we can talk more about that later. But overall, I'm happy to play any class over time.
Well, fair. So what is something people might find surprising about you? It doesn't have to be serious. Doesn't have to be. It just whatever might be fun or whatever you feel like.
So, like a personality trait or like a fun fact about me?
Anything. You carte blanche.
All right. Well, fun fact about me is that I actually lived the earliest years of my life in Hawaii, thanks to my dad being in the Navy. I was born in Maryland, and then shortly after that, it was a military base in Hawaii for 3 years, which I don't remember a ton because it was between the ages of 0 and 4. But it makes for awesome bragging rights, to be perfectly honest.
Well, there we go. And we've had Chalker on, who is also, I don't think he lives in Hawaii now. I don't think he was born there. Hard to remember. All right. So just final question for the interview portion. Illidan, hero or villain?
Illidan is complicated. He's a very ends justify the means type of character, both in terms of what he will sacrifice of his own and what he will do as damage for collateral. I'd say that he's the hero of his own story and he has been useful, but I believe that there was a far better alternative to everything that he did. So it feels like a cop out to say anti-hero. So I'll say maybe technically a villain who considers himself a hero and has done some heroic things, but I fall into the philosophical category of you can't use evil to defeat evil because then you just take its place as the new evil. Kind of a Lord of the Rings philosophy is more of what I take. You can't use the ring to defeat Sauron, and I would argue that as a demon hunter, you can't truly use demonic power to end demonic terror.
I feel like you just called Illidan Dexter.
Yep, I guess I just did.
Fair enough. So we just recently had some balance changes. I believe we talked about what they were going to be. I think we knew, maybe I don't. No, we knew they were coming. They nerfed Yogg, which was great. He is now 9 mana. Still does all the same things. There's no cost reduction anymore, but every time you play him now, he has 2 spells that are cast randomly. So he's a little bit more Yogg-ish. I've only seen him in the Mage Wild deck I've been playing because I've just been too lazy to take him out. He's not good anymore. No one's playing him, which I think is a fantastic. What were your thoughts on Yogg, and how happy are you with, or not happy are you with the nerf here?
Well, it certainly caused me to take Yogg out of any deck that I'd slotted him in that was counting on this is a lot of spells in the deck that will reduce the cost. I will say that it did kind of drive me nuts that they have a Yogg card that they classify as a Titan when an old god is very much the opposite of a Titan. Again, just from that lore standpoint, though I understand it's a mechanical term in this sense. It kind of drives me nuts a little bit that it was changed so much. But again, like you said, it is more flavorful to Yogg type of stuff. And I love a good Chaos Mage. I love, like, some people complain about all the RNG in Hearthstone, but I absolutely love it. I love seeing what random stuff will be thrown, especially when you're playing in Wild and you get more and more possibilities with every expansion that comes out. And I also just really enjoy the challenge of, okay, here's the random situation that you've been given. How can you make the most of it? So I'm sure that I'll find ways to enjoy the Yogg Chaos and slot it into maybe like more Mage Chaos, or if there can be some other Chaos class. The tentacle stuff is still really fun. Don't take that out of context. And just, you play them and you get progressively bigger spells. Um, yeah, I don't know exactly what I'll do with Yogg, but I think there's probably potential. One of the things I say about Hearthstone is that there's no such thing as a useless card, just a card that hasn't had its synergy cards invented yet. And if you play Wild, that will inevitably happen.
I believe I even saw Sergeant Sally in a recent list in was it in Twist? I saw it somewhere pop up, and people were like, "This is actually a card that's being included." Um, so they also nerfed Prison Breaker, which I'm pretty happy with because even though I use both those cards in a couple decks, like 100 deck, it's just nice to not have that clear, especially with me playing the Paladin. I'm pretty happy with that not being an instant kind of clear or even just popping Divine Shields. Um, it all the nerfs seem pretty good. We haven't seen much. I've seen some druids, but we've been seeing Wamper Druid and the Drum Druid's back, but no more Spell Druid, no more Ramp Druid. So that's been pretty good. How overall have you been happy with the nerfs?
I am very happy to no longer have to suffer through endless single turn OTKs using Tony King of Piracy. Um, Part of it drives me nuts again when a card is reworked to the extent that like it loses the whole thing that it was meant for in the first place. Like the same thing with Mind Reader or Lucia. Um, they keep putting in these cool concepts of like swapping decks or getting a copy of your deck. I think maybe trying to recapture the craziness of Rafam. I like your deck. I think I will take it. But people just keep abusing this stuff in the game, and they have to get rid of the fun concept of the swapping things in order to make it fair and fun to play. So I'm disappointed in the situation. I entirely understand, and I'm happy to not have to just hit concede as soon as someone plays that card, because otherwise I'll die of boredom.
And to be clear, Tony now has a battle cry of give you it's basically destroy your deck, give yourself a copy of your opponent's deck. So it's no longer an aura, it's no longer doing the thing, and the jailer now only makes himself immune and not your entire board for the rest of time. So they nerf both of those pretty hard. I'm sure there'll be some uses for them somewhere, especially in Wild, but as of right now, all those combos are gone. But those are old cards. We've had some new cards put out, at least for the announcements for Festival of Legends. We're still in reveal season. I'm sorry, in Showdown in the Badlands. And again, we're not going to concede. We're not these shows that are going to go through everything card by card, but we're just going to briefly touch on that. So we haven't seen all the classes. There's still Rogue coming out. There's still a couple others coming out. Paladin, I think, is coming out on the 1st. With what so far has been the class you are most excited about?
Well, like I said, I love a good Chaos Mage, and the Mage cards are looking to be pretty fun. We have a Legendary that's going to reduce the cost of cards that didn't start in your deck, which is always fun when you're generating all sorts of new spells and whatnot. We have more secret support, which is one of those things that you love it when you're playing it, you hate it when you're facing up against it. I find the new Azurite Vein secret to be interesting, which is when an enemy plays a card on your turn that it entered their hand, then you get a copy that costs 0. So the sort of thing that's kind of playing opposite of the new quick draw mechanic that is being introduced here, where something that normally they'd be rewarded for, you're suddenly rewarded for. Just kind of an interesting take on secrets. I'm also looking forward to the heavy dragon synergy they're leaning in for Druid. I haven't really been doing much Druid for a while, but again, I'm a very flavor-based person with what I enjoy doing here, so this looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I will say I'm not, even though I play Warlock a lot, so far I'm not really hitting it with an ideas of exactly what I would use the new Warlock cards for. Same with Death Knight. I actually really like Death Knight. Not hitting me out of the gate right here, but there can be a huge difference with the cards that I think I'm going to play a ton and enjoy during reveal season, and then after I've experimented or gotten some deck lists from people who are better at the game than me, realizing, oh, This actually is pretty fun to play with, even if I didn't see it coming. Dreadlich Tamsin is one of those cards back from the Alterac Valley expansion. I completely underestimated that card. I didn't think it was going to be very much. The battle cry was very simplistic, and I generally look for really fun battle cries in a hero card, but it's been a pretty core card of a lot of my Warlock decks since it came out. So what do I know sometimes,
Yeah, that's fair. I think so far I agree with you on Mage. I'm looking forward to seeing some of Mage. I'm not sure how excited I am about the secret stuff, but be playing against the secret stuff never, and especially when they have the objection currently in standard and all that. But I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Tethelian Bloodwatcher is a 4-mana 2/5 legendary that cards that didn't start in your deck cost 4 less, but not less than 1. Fantastic that they're adding but not less than 1. It's nice to see that. But it's also going to be, I think, a card that's going to slot in right into one of those Chaos Mages in Wild that we were talking about, because you get so many generated cards that having them cost nothing or close to nothing is probably going to be pretty fun. I'm also interested in Sunset Volley, which is a 10-mana mage spell. Deal 10 damage, randomly split among all enemies. Summon a random 10-cost minion. Which I wonder if that means Millhouse Manastorm is going to see his DJ Manastorm, whatever it is. I wonder if that will come into play, because we didn't have enough big spells in Mage to make that worth it, where your spells start at 0 or 1, and then every next spell gets more expensive. Maybe there's a home for him there. Who knows? At least maybe we'll see people try. But the one I'm not quite... I'm a little worried about Warlock, because the Azurite. So as we talked about the excavations, you had some cards have 4 levels of treasures, and that 4th level is a legendary, and then it rotates back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the legendary for Warlock is a snake that steals 10 health from your opponent and increases your health total by 10. Or so basically your max, from what I understand, you're not just taking 10 life from them, but you're taking 10 life of their cap. So then if they're a class like Priest, they can't heal past 20 if you've played this, and you have a health cap of 40. So that is going to be
kind of like a reverse of that original Priest spell, where you get the reward that sets your health at 40. This takes it away from someone else.
And there's a new panda type card in the neutrals, and there is, so if you all remember in Festival of Legends, everyone was worried that you were going to see the card. What was the card? There was one card that people were worried about, that then it would change. Tony. It was like you would steal with Tony. You would then play Fires as an Ajari, and then you would play Steam Cleaner. And everyone was worried about that combo. I saw it maybe twice in all this time, and I think I won one of those games still, because I had a board and they did their thing and I just killed them. But there's another combo that people are talking about, where I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not going to go through it all, but it's basically you play Thaddeus and on even when he's even, and then there's an excavate, 2-mana excavate, and then there's like this whole cycle that you keep going through, and you keep getting that snake, and you can do it like infinitely APM. And people were like worried about, we're going to see this is going to be problem. I think the snake's going to be problematic. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see an infinite combo happening outside of maybe a YouTube clip from Mark McKenzie or something. It's not going to happen. Anytime we get worried about these things, remember everybody was worried about cover artists and Titans. I think I've seen maybe 3 cover artists in the last 3 months. So I don't think we're particularly worried about those things. They're fun to speculate about, and it's fun to see people come up with these ideas. Oh, here's how they're going to break the system, but it never ends up being a thing. But I'm excited for the new set. I'm actually enjoying the meta right now. I'm really enjoying the meta now that Yogg is out of it. So I'm content. I don't need it this quickly, but I'm happy to get new cards. It's always fun. But But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about some lore. So normally this is the part of bread and butter where we call it's dinner. I get a little hungry. Doc says, "Yeah, let's talk about dinner." But I normally have a set of questions or a guidance to take our guests in whatever their focus is. Like last week we had Corb. We talked about high level gameplay, and I don't have that tonight. Tonight we have Goliath the Dwarf here to talk about lore. So Goliath, take it away.
All right. So we're going to be focusing on giving you a heads up about some of the lore for the Badlands set. Now, as I mentioned, Hearthstone will often play fast and loose with Warcraft lore, and they will often have kind of a pattern with the sets where, given a year, you'll often have like a silly set, serious lore heavy set, silly set, or reverse, where you're going to have like two maybe more serious ones and a silly one in between. Like examples will be, we had Whispers of the Old Gods that's followed immediately by One Night in Karazhan. You know, it's not, you get juxtaposition there quite a bit. So we just had a massive lore heavy, very lore heavy set with the Titans, and Hearthstone is very much going in, this is our own direction here, with giving a real wild Western flair to an existing zone in World of Warcraft. It's been here since the beginning, the Valent days, in fact, called the Badlands. And so unlike something like Titans, where almost every legendary was a significant lore character, often whom had like massive backstories or were great cosmic beings who had a huge impact on the story. There's so far, like, we haven't had all the cards revealed yet, but of the ones that we have maybe about 3 who are actual characters in World of Warcraft, and all the rest are fun characters that Hearthstone has decided to invent along with the Wild Western theme, just really leaning into that here. But I'm here to tell you at least a few of the basics about the lore roots for Hearthstone's just very fun Western themed expansion here. So what are the Badlands? The Badlands are a very arid zone. Again, that's why it makes it a good Wild West setting. Within the dwarven kingdom of Khazmodan, which coincidentally is, not coincidentally, is named after the Titan Khazgoroth, because the dwarves are pretty obsessed with Titan history, and so they named their kingdom after it. The Badlands are one of those areas. This is a pretty common theme in Warcraft, actually. There are very few, if any, deserts that were just natural deserts. Almost all deserts in World of Warcraft were once lush zones that had something terrible happen to them that extinguished all life in the area. Like in Uldum, for example, that was once a big jungle, but you had like this big pulse from the Forge of Re-Origination that wiped out all of the jungles on there and made it so that there can only be desert. Badlands is kind of a similar story, where it was once pretty lush, but there was a little incident when Ragnaros accidentally got summoned to the world, creating Blackrock Mountain, and kind of ended up burning that area out as part of the process, according to the WoW Wiki. It's a place where there's not a ton of heavy story that goes on, but there are some pretty significant features here. One of the most prominent is a Titan city called Uldaman, which is home to a lot of the Earthen, who are like the non-fleshy, the stony ancestors of the dwarves. It is actually considered to be a horde zone in the Eastern Kingdoms region, even though it's smack in the middle of a lot of Alliance territory. You have a couple goblin cartel cities, and there's actually a pretty significant dragon story that happens there that we'll get into in just a little bit. But of all of the legendary cards that have been released so far as of this recording, we only have about 3 that are actual characters. The first is one that we've already been talking about, Talathan Bloodwatcher. who is the leader of the Blood Elven Reliquary, which is kind of like the Horde rival to the Alliance-based League of Explorers. People who have played since the original League of Explorers set in Hearthstone will remember the Warlock card, the Reliquary Seeker. This guy is essentially her boss. The Reliquary is a Blood Elven group that is obsessed with uncovering ancient artifacts from around Azeroth. Was initially founded as a way to try to help the Blood Elves find alternative ways to cure their magic addiction, to be pretty simple about it. And yeah, they kind of have this run-in with the League of Explorers. It's kind of like a, Indiana Jones versus the Nazis type of thing, except not quite so black and white evil. Though the League of Explorers is more based on the idea that we're here to say things for history, and the Reliquary is themed around the idea that we want to use these ancient artifacts for power. So you do have a bit of that same theme there, but they aren't necessarily evil. They just have their own goals for what they want to use things for. We also have one of the first cards that was revealed for the set, Theladrin the Lost, who is one of our hunter legendaries. He's the dwarf with the big fist there, and he's a minor NPC and quest giver in the Badlands area. He actually is a former member of the old god worshipping Twilight's Hammer cult, who decided to kind of break with them, and has this whole story and quest line back in the original vanilla World of Warcraft about a book to summon some powerful creatures that kind of ended up having its pages torn all over the place. And eventually he just stopped being insane. It's not quite clear exactly how that happened, but after the Cataclysm expansion, which revamped many zones and gave new quests for them, he has an interesting quest where he's sitting with a couple other quest giver NPCs telling tall tales. And he tells a story that you kind of reenact in the quest of how he just punched his way through a ton of earth elementals and then went up and punched Deathwing right in the face. Thus the kind of the emphasis on the fist in his art and theme. And then we have Rhea Straza, who is our Druid Dragon legendary card, who is really interesting because she helped kickstart the origin of a pretty beloved long-running character in Warcraft at this point, actually, Rathian. So dragons have this ability to be able to change their form into a mortal guise. Many of them have like their standards, like, your human or your elf or whatnot. Rhea Straza is very unique because when you first meet her as a quest giver in the Badlands, she's actually disguising herself as a goblin, which you don't really see very often. Maybe you'll have a bronze dragon disguise himself as a gnome like Chromie, but you don't really see goblins. And it turns out that she is working on using Titan technology to be able to try to purify black dragon eggs to remove the old god taint and curse of madness that affected Deathwing and pretty much all black dragons. And she ends up getting killed by Deathwing in the process of the quest, but the egg survives and hatches, and that is where little whelp Rathian is born. And he has quite the journey throughout various expansions. The current WoW expansion, as of this recording, Dragonflight, he has been having some pretty massive rolls in, helping to get the Black Dragonflight up on its feet. He has had some pretty major roles in like accidentally kickstarting a demonic invasion through the unintended consequences of his attempts to subvert said invasion. He has been very cocky and very immature in the past, but he's grown up quite a bit since. This thing about dragons is even when they're whelps, they're like extremely intelligent and think they know everything. Just the nature of being a dragon. But yeah, Rhea Straza is a cool character that I'm looking forward to giving a bit of a lore play. Sometimes I like to try to create a deck that's not necessarily meant to win, but themed around like a certain story element of how many connected characters can you manage to draft into one deck. That's a fun little challenge I'm looking forward to with that one. Those are kind of the core characters so far that we have from Badlands set, but we also have a couple other elements that we can talk about very literally, because elementals are pretty prominent in this expansion. I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, Tito, I think this might be the most emphasis we've seen on the element tribe and the whole if you played an element last turn since Ungoro.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, they're really leaning into it. So I figured we'd talk just a little bit about the nature of elementals as well, so they're kind of fitting in. So the way that elementals work in World of Warcraft story is that they are kind of the natural, most basic life forms that evolve on worlds in the cosmos, in the great dark beyond, which is the World of Warcraft name for outer space. And a lot of time, they will be balanced out and a lot more mellow with the element of spirit, which a lot of planets have. But Azeroth, where World of Warcraft and Hearthstone are mostly set, is a special world that has what's called a world soul in it, which is essentially a baby titan that's kind of waiting to hatch out of an egg in a sense. And that ended up like sucking all of the spirit energy in. So that left all of the other elementals, your fire, earth, water, air, without anything to keep them in check. And they became like very aggressive and violent. You have, of course, a lot of our old favorites, Ragnaros the Fire Lord, Alakir the Wind Lord, Neptulon the Tide Hunter, and the one that they still haven't made a legendary of for some reason, Therazin the Stone Mother. We have all of the others, but we don't have Earth represented for some reason. I'm disappointed in you.
We still have a few more days left of reveals.
That's fair. So the way that it works is that the elementals are tied to the world, and they can't really be truly killed. So when the Titans came and decided that the old gods and the enslaved elementals needed to be locked away and chill out, they realized you can't really kill the elementals, so they're just going to come back. So they created these worlds called the elemental planes that they kind of lock them in. And if you kill an elemental in its plane, then it actually truly dies. But a lot of them either get summoned or still find ways back to regular old Azeroth, what you might call a material plane if you are using like D&D terms, for example. And they can actually sometimes form composite elementals if you get them mixed together. Like, for example, you have things like tar elementals, which might be if you get like an earth and a water elemental mixed up, or an ice elemental might be when a bit of water and a bit of air elemental combine together. And they're frequently spoken to by shamans. It's a big part of a lot of shamanistic cultures in World of Warcraft, is having a balanced and healthy diplomatic relationship with the elements where you ask them for help. Mages will also work with elementals, but they're more about kind of like using magic to kind of create and control artificial ones a lot more of the time than talking to them from the elemental plane. And I think it's going to be really fun to visit elementals as a strong tribe synergy again in the Badlands. There's a lot of interesting story elements they can have with some of these. Elementals can be very powerful creatures, or we can also have just like the teeny little cute ones, like a little pebble or a little water drop or something. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what we have in store for that. And the last one that we're going to talk about, because this is a big theme in the set, is Azerite. Tito, what do you know about Azerite?
Well, I know that it seems to be out of place in the Badlands because, from what I understand, the Badlands is like a story from the past, but the Azerite is basically, as far as I understand, the blood of the Titan, which is in the core, and it started leaking when Sargeras jammed a sword into it at the end of one of the expansions, and that's where we started trying to farm Azurite, and that was, it might have already been there, but it became prominent then.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, at the end of the Burning Legion's invasion, after the Titans were freed from Sargeras trying to corrupt and imprison them, they managed to imprison him and put an end to the demon invasion. But as like a last spiteful jab, he literally just stuck his sword into the world of Azeroth, and that wounded it so deep it started bleeding this material called Azurite. Now, Azurite has been said to have been found, like if you dig deep enough in various places. The goblin leader Jaster Gallywix actually had a cane that had been made from the stuff before, but it was just kind of like a dull, lifeless red at the time. And it turned out that after the sword was put in and this stuff kind of started to be more like magically awakened, then his cane started like turning all sorts of magical colors and everything, which is how he learned a lot about Azurite. And yeah, it's something that's found in a lot of places in the world as it's kind of leaking out. Frequently in islands. In World of Warcraft, one of the main places that you get it is in Island Expeditions, this little game mode that they put in with all sorts of different places in the ocean. It's something that the Alliance and Horde were fighting over quite a bit in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. It was kind of like World of Warcraft's plutonium, like the race for the atom bomb type of thing, because they're like, oh, we can't let the other faction get it. This stuff's too powerful. And it is. Like, it's a really powerful explosive. It can be a powerful energy source. It's kind of nebulous. I don't know if it's actually been fully defined precisely what it can and can't do. It kind of serves plot. It has plot convenience powers, you might say. But a funny thing is that sword is currently still sticking in the ground as we speak in the story, and not much has been to address it so far. So we'll see if they ever get back to that story element, honestly. But yeah, it's Azurite is something that can theoretically be popping out anywhere, and it's unclear exactly when this Badlands story is taking place, because in the trailer they said this takes place a long time ago, but they could just be referring to like that's an Old West type of story. But lore-wise, if we're talking strictly from a World of Warcraft standpoint, it wouldn't make sense for all this Azurite stuff to be out before the Battle for Azeroth content. But if this is something that takes place afterwards, I suppose it would still make sense. And it certainly fills the role of something for the theme that they're going for with the Old West about the prospectors exploiting the land in search of gold or oil or whatnot. Azurite is kind of like the thing in World of Warcraft lore that fills that particular niche of what's something that's super rare, super powerful, people would be willing to possibly, destroy the land in order to get rich off of. Azurite fills that niche. And again, we have that relationship of just like the fun tall tale of someone who might not be getting quite all their history right. So if it fits in, if you know where to take the lore seriously and where to accept the Hearthstone plays fast and loose with it.
Well, from what I understand, this is Elise before we're theorizing that this is Elise before the League of Explorers. So that's why we are thinking it's earlier.
That would make sense, yeah. It's interesting. Elise has taken quite a life of her own as a character since she was first introduced in League of Explorers. We have her sister now, and it'd be interesting, the idea of learning a bit of the type of things that she did before the League. We already know stuff about Reno Jackson. Turns out he was a dragon this whole time. And Bran is a lore character, and Finley was Murloc, doing Murloc things. So yeah, I guess Elise is kind of the one of the core four to have some more backstory really fleshed out on. I'm excited to see what happens, where they take the story elements of the expansion.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. Well, that was a lot of information. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. We typically ask a question now, and this is very serious. What's your favorite dessert?
That's going to change. I'm a very seasonal based person. I love holidays and things of the different seasons. So Right now, if you're asking me at the moment, we're in fall, and Halloween may be just around the corner, but Thanksgiving is the one that has the special desserts attributed to it. I'm going to say, wait, are you familiar with Great Pumpkin Dessert at all?
Never heard of it.
Okay, so basically it's almost this kind of custardy cake type of thing. Basically, you mix together like pumpkin and evaporated milk and spices and pudding mix, actually vanilla pudding mix, and a couple other things, and you pour it, and so it's like a very liquidy mixture that you put into a cake pan. Then you sprinkle it with yellow cake powder, like one of those boxes that you get at a store. You just sprinkle that right on top. You don't mix it in, and then drizzle it with some butter and maybe put like some pecans on top. Stick it in the oven, and it is really good. It's one of my family's core Thanksgiving desserts that we have, along with pumpkin pudding pie, which is also really good. It's different from your typical pumpkin pie, where it's one of those refrigerated pies. So you basically have a graham cracker crust, and then you have one layer where you mix together Cool Whip and some cream cheese and some milk and sugar, and you put that on. And then you have a second layer, which is, again, we have kind of the pudding mix and the pumpkin and spices and all that. And then you just stick it in the fridge for a few hours, and it's this double layer pumpkin pie with a white layer and an orange layer, and both of them are absolutely delicious. So since you're asking me this right now with this season, that's the answer I'm going to give for favorite dessert.
It seems your family is very into casserole as a dessert.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, yeah.
So, listeners, we ask you this every week. It'd be nice if you all left us a review. Whether you like us or you don't like us, tell us how you feel. You have to go to Apple Podcasts or whatever. I looked for Spotify. I could not find a place to leave reviews on Spotify. You can leave a rating there. You can you can 5-star it there, but we want to hear from you. You can send us, reach out to us on social media, whatever. But speaking of social media, Goliath, where can people find you out there in the world?
I'm not as super active on a lot of social media, but if you would like to read any of the old lore guides that I wrote that are still up on the Out of Cards website, I strongly recommend you go and check them out. Again, that is outof.games is the current name of the domain. I can go to the Hearthstone section, look for guides, and we have a whole section on lore, which I wrote several during my time there. If you would like to interact with me personally, you can generally find me on Discord at Goliath the Dwarf, all one word, GoliathTheDwarf. I also technically have a Twitch channel, which I haven't done anything on for years, but if you would like to find that in the event that I randomly decide to start streaming one day, you can. It's the same spelling, same term, Goliath the Dwarf. That's pretty much all I have.
And you can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I actually do stream at Tito Santana HS. You have any shout outs this week, Goliath?
I'd just like to shout out the people in the Hearthstone community who got me here. Shout out of Games, and shout out to the Born to Be Wild. I would not have such a deep love for the game and a sense of community surrounding it without these communities that took me in and embraced my love of the lore and merging it with Hearthstone. So yeah, just give a shout out to them and a big thank you.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'm going to shout out Corb last week. I really enjoyed that episode. And thank you yourself for coming on. It's been a lot of fun. Sorry, we couldn't have our host or our sub host, but I still had fun. It was still very interesting. I also want to shout out. So I had a bit idea, and it was going to be with Electric Sheep City, Storm Rage, Just the Guy. It's still almost done. We'll get it out there. But Electric Sheep City was supposed to be here tonight. Like we said, his internet has been out for a couple days. Something about new construction, cutting fiber or something like that. So he wasn't even to get me his portion of the bet. But I appreciate that people just were willing to record a couple things for me. And it was a little silly bit, and it's going to be fun. So it's a nice goof. But we'll have that probably next week. Or maybe I'll have it at the beginning of this episode. I don't know. We'll see what happens when I edit it and when Sheep gets his stuff back. But anyway, I think that's it. I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
It's like two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.